We are certainly in no shortage of options when it comes to shopping, and honestly, that's kind of become part of the experience. Wading through a sea of choices, the excitement of finding that one thing that checks all your boxes, the thrill of the hunt. But are you getting the thrill of the best deals? Because at the end of the day, even the perfect purchase can be made even better with great deals. And that's where Rakuten comes in. Rakuten helps you get the brands you love with the most savings and cash back. You can start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Levi's, Kiehl's, and Petco, and even stack sales on top of cash back. It's easy to use, and you get your cash back through PayPal or check. The concept is simple. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cash back. It's truly a win-win, because you can shop all these amazing brands in one place and save money while you do it. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal, or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's Rakuten. Who among us doesn't enjoy a good mystery? And especially when solving it means that I get to bring out my competitive side, even if it's just me against the clock. I just can't wait to uncover all the secrets. So June's Journey is a game that is completely up my alley, and I think you'll love it too. In June's Journey, a hidden object mystery game, you play as June Parker, who's on a quest to solve her sister's murder and uncover her family's many secrets. Each chapter brings you deeper into the story, and it's set in the Roaring '20s, so beyond uncovering clues, you get to experience the glitz and glamour of the time. June's Journey is definitely not a game I play mindlessly, which I love because I get genuinely invested, and a lot of it is a race against time, so there's a little fun added pressure of trying to find the clues as quickly as you can in each scene. There are also tons of ways to customize the island that you're on, learn more about the characters, and then new chapters are added weekly, so you really can't run out of things to explore. So if you think you're up to solve this case, download June's Journey for free today on iOS or Android, or play on PC through Facebook Games. June needs your help, detective.
Hey, just a quick note up at the top here. This is editing Mason from the future. We had a bit of a technical glitch. The software we used to record lost Perry's track, and so we had to use the backup, and the backup had a bunch of skipping in it. So Matt and I did everything we could to try and mitigate it, but unfortunately, the track still contains skipping. And it would be just kind of weird and inauthentic to re-record this kind of episode, and there's a lot of really great stuff in here. So I just wanted to give you a warning at the top that if you hear that skipping, it's not you, it's us. Anyway, for the last time in Season 2, I'm going to play the fantastic theme that we had made by Eli Chambers, EliChambersMusic.com, if you want to check out more of his stuff. And then we'll get on with the show.
I'm Perry Carpenter.
And I'm Mason Amadeus.
And this is Digital Folklore.
Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 10, after the episode of Digital Folklore, Episode 10, No Clipping Reality. We're going to talk about everything related to Season 2, flashback a little bit to Season 1 maybe, forecast into where we're going next, and then talk about Mason's complete getting buried into the dregs of sound design and utter mental chaos and sickness.
Yes, the adventure that was coming to terms with the last episode. I also, and when we talk about the last episode, I think we should talk about what we didn't do, because there was a lot that we didn't do that we almost did.
Okay, I think you've teased that well enough. What didn't we do?
Well, we kicked around a lot of ideas for how to wrap the season, because originally we were going to do a big old collab.
Yeah.
That, due to a variety of factors, didn't end up panning out, but is still going to pan out in the future, so I don't want to spoil it. So I guess I really can't say too much about that. But we had a whole plan for episode 10 that we were kind of banking on for the entirety of the season. And then I think it was like episode 8 or 9 when we sort of realized that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, there was a lot of end-year chaos, right? Because we were aiming to be recording all of this in November, December.
Yeah.
And we recorded it and produced it in February. So there was chaos on everybody's part with this, with ours, with the folks that we were going to collab with, and just all the ways that time and life conspires against people.
Yeah. And so this ended up looking a lot different than we imagined, I feel like.
The Colonel was there.
The Colonel was there.
I think.
Us being in the back rooms, like that part of the whole where we were narratively, but the way we approached it was different. And this iteration, what ended up coming out as episode 10, I think largely took shape because of the ideas you had on that phone call. I remember standing outside of my apartment and pacing around on the street, talking with you on the phone as we were trying to come up with how do we frame this up. And then you pitched the idea of getting listener voicemails.
Well, and so some of that is really fun and self-serving, right? Because we love to hear from our listeners, and we want other listeners to also hear some of the benefit and what other people are really getting out of the show. And then also it's great content because, frankly, people hearing voices other than ours is like what the show's about.
Yeah.
We're just really here to bring other content to the fore. And so many people that we talk to, like on our Discord and our interview guests, have really cool stories and perspectives that I would never think of. And so if we can be a conduit for those voices and get those experiences out there, I think that's great. It's also personally fulfilling to hear that we're producing something that has had an impact on people and that they enjoy listening to. And so getting that perspective and then also that social proof for other people is really cool.
Yeah, I was really touched by the voicemails that we did get. There's the story from Halloween Eve about the monk who was praying on her parents' property. She went and spoke with her parents and got a bunch more details and put those in our Discord and told the rest of that story, and it's super fascinating. Also, we had originally planned to put some gag ones in there because we were going to present it as though we found the voicemails on the Todd terminal. So I had Ty from the podcast Side Character Quest, which is an amazing show. He was the voice of the meme guy from Meme Expo too. He sent me like 5 voicemails that are jokes about like pizza delivery and stuff. And we're going to get one from my dad about how he hasn't seen me in 6 months. And we're going to blend all of those in there. So there was like a lot of stuff that didn't even make it to the cutting room floor because we didn't get that far with it, but we had so many different ideas about how this episode was going to look. And all of that to say, I think the way it came out is actually really cool. I really like it.
Yeah. I like the moodiness of how you brought the voicemails in. I think it really set a tone. And then just also the way you portrayed the back rooms was fun too. So that was a fun contrast.
I got really sentimental listening to them. And that was why I was like, I'm going to put sentimental music because I was like, this is hitting me.
Tell us a little bit about, from a narrative perspective, because we definitely did have this or something like it planned at the beginning of the season, right? This wasn't just kind of pulled out at the last minute. There was the whole thing with the van, and there's what we were leading up with Todd. So tell us about what got us to where we are and what the significance of that is from a narrative standpoint.
That's a good and tricky question. We were always going to end up in the back rooms, right? The back rooms is one of those topics that was requested a lot.
Which was really fun when we were seeing people ask about almond water on the Discord too.
Yeah, because we did reference that a lot without really paying it off, but I like those kinds of nuggets for the people who do get them.
And I will say from a listener community standpoint, there's a ton of interaction that happened right after this episode dropped. This seems to be an episode that generated a lot of interest and a lot of excitement. And so I think that even though we had to switch gears a few times on the way that we delivered it, it fulfilled everything that we were hoping that it was going to do.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff I want to highlight in there. So I'm going to answer your question as fast as I can to get to that. We were always going to end up in the back rooms. The van flying off the cliff at the beginning of season 1, like we knew from the jump that this was how it was going to end. We were just going to cover it differently, and we were going to do something that was more back rooms focused for this episode instead of liminality in general. However, we are going to do something backrooms focused that's going to be very special in the future that I won't give any spoilers on. It's not really a spoiler to say we will, right?
I don't think so.
We're going to do something cool.
It's a tease that we will either fulfill or not in the future. We'll just give the impression that we did no matter what.
Yeah. Pay no attention to the people behind the curtain, but we have something behind this curtain that's going to be very cool. I'm really excited about it. It hasn't happened yet, so I shouldn't count our chickens, but What does it mean? It means we have a lot of things to explore. Matt, who I don't know, have you spoken yet, Matt? Matt's here.
Hi.
No, I think I accidentally iced Matt out at the very beginning. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I was happy to come in as the producer towards the end and be like, hey, I'm here monitoring your conversation. But go on. Yes, I'm here.
Matt is here. Matt edited the interview portions. And also, before we recorded, Matt, you mentioned something that I think describes perfectly how there's a lot of narrative potential. And it's that digital folklore is just one instance in this transitive operational distributed database. And then you two started pitching some really cool ideas right before we started recording about that too. Like, what does this mean?
Well, for me, like I've been trained by the Marvel Cinematic Universe to imagine that the multiverse is a credible theory in which any kind of narrative enterprise can recycle, restart, reboot anything they've got. When the Todd kiosk came up and you talked about the Todd universe, the pocket dimension you were in as an instance, I immediately thought, well, I wonder what other instances there are. What other kind of things could there be out there? And that makes for some very interesting iterations on whatever is going on.
Well, and I also think, so we had it in the episode as distributed database, but there's also in computing distributed systems and, distributed computing architecture. So distributed database could be one subsystem of a larger system. And I was getting at that there can be varying code bases because in software development, often you get to where you get a known stable release that can be a core node, and then you build branches off of that. So we could end up in a future where there are multiple Todds that are working for or against each other.
And we can explore all these different forks of the Todd code base.
Yes.
I think there's a good example to describe what you're talking about as potential, which is in a particular episode of Rick and Morty, ignoring all of the furor around the creator of Rick and Morty at the time. But there's an episode where they are traveling between different universes, which is a thing they've established in that show. But there's one where there are people on the phone ordering pizza on their couch when they run past them. And then they run past another universe where there's pizzas on the couch ordering humans on their phone. And then there's another universe they go through where there's phones on the couch talking through humans to order pizza.
Amazing.
So like there's lots of iterative, interesting narrative devices in there that you could play with.
We just do permutations of the same narrative arc over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get it to where we're pulling the strings and there's a poor guy named Todd trying to figure out how to run a podcast.
It's a much less sympathetic story. Two dudes torture this poor business owner.
Well, that was going to be the question I was going to use to completely break your brain. Who created Todd?
Personally, I don't believe in Todd. I didn't grow up with a family that believed in Todd, and so I don't believe in Todd, really. He's just a bunch of hexadecimal flying around. That's all he is.
It'd be interesting to go into some ancient literature and see what that reveals about Todd.
You think it's some like ancient aliens kind of thing?
I don't know. I bet that if we went to some pyramids and looked deeply enough at hieroglyphics that we would find references to Todd. Oh, that actually relates to, I'll get this one out of the way because it does relate to this conversation right now, which was a comment that we got on Spotify. And this came from Corvids Are Us. And it says, I know you were asking what we think Todd is, but have you considered the amount of lore you could start by just giving us a vague categorical name? And I think we stumbled into that with the Todd kiosk and the idea of multiple permutations of that kind of code base. And is that actually Todd, or did Todd create an instance of himself that lives within some kind of computing environment?
Right. What? Yeah, that's a great question. Is Todd another layer above this as just a supernatural entity that is projected into the back rooms as this kind of thing, or is this actually Todd? That's a great question.
Here's one more Todd-related question that I'll do before we go on, because we can come back to some of these other comments later on. These are comments in Spotify, by the way, for those that are listening. This is another one from Corvids Are Us. If this season is going to finish with the defeat of Todd or whatever, and Todd isn't in control anymore, how are you going to make a new related season?
That's a great question.
And I have a pretty easy answer for this, and it goes all the way back to episodes 1 and 2 of season 1. And that is when we talked about monster theory. One of the 7 theses, I think it's number 3, is the monster always escapes.
Mic drop.
And so no matter what we do, if there is an antagonistic force that is personified in some way, part of the allure of that antagonistic force that we've created a persona around is that it is slippery and can escape.
And this is, I don't say this in any way with any negativity attached at all, but I love that kind of a question where it's like, how are you possibly going to keep telling this story? Because it makes me think of when Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett wrote Good Omens.
Yeah, brilliant book.
Terry Pratchett passed away. They're going to make Good Omens too. And there was all this discourse on Twitter. And I just remember this one person was like, how are they going to make Good Omens 2? Terry Pratchett is dead. Like, what are they going to do? Just make it up? And Neil Gaiman replied and was like, wait till you hear how we did the first one.
Yeah, totally forgetting that Neil Gaiman was a co-author and that his voice is actually, in my opinion, a little bit stronger than Terry's voice in that book.
And it's also, I feel like we treat stories as sort of weird, immutable objects sometimes, which I know goes against talking about folklore, but in terms of the way we think of them. And so to just realize that it's all just made up. How are you possibly going to do this? That's the feeling that is intended to have, right?
Yeah.
That's the feeling, that's the goal feeling.
Well, and we've talked before about the heart of any kind of creative, what somebody will go, oh, that was a brilliant idea. How did you think of that? It's usually because you've been boxed into a corner somehow and you have to find a way to punch through it.
Right.
Anytime we've done something cool with sound design or bringing in a new character or created a new narrative path, it's always because we've boxed ourselves in somewhere and are trying to find an interesting way that kind of is going to have a payoff for the listener, but then also open us up into new things rather than just kind of kill the journey where it was.
And I have an example of that in sound design from this episode, that little dream sequence transition. I was literally like, I'm doing the same transition into all of these sections and it's getting a little heavy. What can break it up? And I was like, I clicked on that by mistake and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll use my little dream sequence thing that I have tucked away. And Ty messaged me after that and said that got a laugh out of him. So I'm glad that had the intended effect.
Because it's so like the stereotypical dream sequence sound.
Out of nowhere, in an episode that doesn't have that kind of thing anywhere else.
Wind chimes.
Yeah.
Well, if I can massage your egos just a little bit, there is an observer effect that comes with very compelling stories as well. The fact that someone can listen to episode 1, forward project what they think will happen about the show, and then wonder what's going to happen after that. They haven't even listened to the rest yet. This is why arguments about whether Wolverine can beat Magneto or not, because Wolverine's full of metal. This is all DC universe stuff that I'm getting into. But like these arguments that don't have answers, that would be answered by narrative, but more so it's the people listening and watching that take something from it, use their imagination. Everyone's got their own interpretation. And I think someone can only do that when you create enough space for them to create that interpretation, but also give them enough effective narrative work, effective sound work in this case as well, to create those observer instances as well.
Nothing makes me more excited than that.
I don't have a specific example in mind, but I know that there have been some choices in the narrative that we've made just based on a comment here and there that we saw in Discord. I wish that I had the specific instances off the top of my head so that person could feel the payoff, but hopefully they did in the listening.
Some night I will sit down with a glass of wine and just paw through the Discord and just make notes of any times that the Discord has influenced the direct writing.
Yeah, that would be great.
One quick note on the Discord before we get to, something that I think we're all excited to talk about is people were sharing a lot of their thoughts about liminal spaces, and we should talk about that. But something that has been on my mind a lot lately, I've been reading a lot about not the death of the internet, but dead internet theory, which is that most of the internet is bots making content for other bots and replying to other bots and following links from other bots, and it's not a lot of people. And then nowadays, because of the proliferation of AI-generated content, most search results turn up these badly written SEO-hijacked AI writing pages that I've been dealing with this feeling of nothing is for anybody and we're filling all available space with it. And so seeing the Discord community spring up around this show and like people finding actual other people to talk to and and it just makes me really happy to see that we've made a space for people to come together. And so I think if there's one thing that I really want people to do is to join the Discord and like hang out and find community in these spaces, because there's this broader trend right now of a lot of the internet's communities moving to Discord, which is making availability of information a little bit tricky, especially niche information, because you used to be able to go to Reddit, and you still can at the moment append Reddit to the end of your search to find real people talking about, like, but broadcast engineering is just niche enough that would be the only place you could find people talking about some of that stuff. Or trade websites that are few and far between and all look like they're from the 90s. A lot of that's moving to Discord because you can't find it through search engines. And so, yeah, I think getting people into our Discord community and really forming a community of humans is important. And so if you're not in there yet, please join. That's my stump speech. I'll get off the soapbox.
No, I love the stump speech, because one of the things that's really cool about the Discord community is that we started it around the show, but the community there is really supporting the community. Is we're not there actively having to prop it up in any way, which means that there's something special going on, that it's not about me or Mason or Matthew or anybody else. It is about the topics that people are passionate about, and then friendships that are forming. And that's pretty amazing to see.
And then hearing Jackalope in his voice message from the episode saying, like, shout out to Dorian for learning about folk necromancy and stuff like that. It's just really cool. That, I think, is the most fulfilling thing that has come from this for me.
Join the Discord, join the discourse.
Exactly.
Join the Discord, join the discourse. And at the moment, the discourse is around everybody's favorite liminal spaces.
I've been stuck in a perpetually liminal space between Australia and Ireland and the United States. So
oh my gosh, you have.
I haven't slept much. So mine is bogged down with caffeine and, mind travel and somehow a strengthening of my Australian accent. I didn't think that would happen outside of Australia, but
I was going to say, do you think it's like oppositional defiance disorder kicking in?
As someone who works from home a lot and doesn't encounter too many different Irish people, I have now encountered just enough that have gone, wait a second, what did you just say? For me to start leaning into that accent a little bit stronger. So people think I'll come back sounding Irish, but I think I'm going to sound like an ochre Australian more so than anything else.
Nice.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But we also sell merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell and grow at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. They have an all-in-one e-commerce platform and in-person POS system, so wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. With the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers. Shopify has allowed us to share something tangible with the podcast community we've built here, selling our beanies, sweatshirts, and mugs to fans of our shows without taking up too much time from all the other work we do to bring you even more great content. And it's not just us. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Shopify is also the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/REALM now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/realm.
Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
So I pulled up Discord. A couple of ties come to mind, and I don't want to give Ty too much airtime, but I do love a couple of the ones because he just bullet pointed like 6 of them. The one that really resonates with me when I read it is the second to the last, says the sound of an orchestra tuning before a performance.
Oh, that's such a good one.
I would have never thought of that, but there is that weird feeling. It's like, because there's nothing really happening other than the fact that people are getting ready to do something, but that is a performative moment in and of itself because it builds this really cool anticipation.
Yeah, there's all that tension, and you know you're about to be surrounded by by the sound. Yeah, that's such a good one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw that Haunted said that she really enjoys being at work before the library opens, which is a really interesting time. Like usually the lights haven't been turned on yet. It's an area that should be filled with people, but it's not. And you're kind of preparing the space to have people in it, but it's not really serving its purpose yet. And I resonate with that because that's what the school holidays were like when I was doing tech support at a school. When students and teachers aren't around and you can kind of walk around this space that should have people in it but doesn't, it kind of feels quite liminal, I think.
Right, but like before anything is about to happen, there's this sense of this place is set up for this, or you're setting this place up for whatever might happen to it, right?
All right, so here's a non-liminal rabbit hole to go down for a second, because I'm just reading through the comments, some of these for the first time right now. Because I've been seeing like my Discord notifications have been going off the charts, but I'm in the middle of a weird work project that's eating up most of my attention. But like a few after ties, Hannah jumps in and says, sorry to interrupt the very good, serious conversation, but I just wanted to say the sporches in this episode. and then Marty jumps in and says, talk about liminal spaces. Poor Mason stuck in the sporch until the next episode. Something to help him. Dorian says, the wet noises happened while I was trying to eat lunch, and that was a mistake.
Right after I uploaded it, I thought, should I put a content warning for like misophonia? Because there's some glips and glorps, some real wet stuff going on in there.
And then NCEC teacher says, I think the worst will be I will be eating a tuna fish sandwich while listening to the episode.
Oh, no.
I think I messaged both of you directly straight after listening to the episode and said something like, I can almost hear the gag reflexes of everybody around the world being tested by the last 5 minutes of that episode.
The delivery of cheese off a pizza.
Oh, there's probably some bloopers because like the first time I read the full script was when we were having to do the recording for it. I think there was a line like, it is wet and like moist, and I couldn't get through it.
And it was the phrase "interestingly warm," and then I did
interesting.
I did save the blooper.
It smells like old stroganoff.
Oh,
so visceral.
That was so much fun. All of that was a reference to a very specific time in my life, actually, not with crawling under a carpet. Oh God, do you want to know this story?
Yeah.
I guess I've started now. I can't. So one time when I was 18, I moved out to my first apartment. I'm going to tell this as fast as possible. Moved out to my first apartment. Terrible apartment. Horrible experience. Loved it. Right? That's what you do when you're 18. I was making beef stroganoff one night, and we had very little in our fridge. And so I had already started cooking it, and I realized we didn't have milk and we didn't have butter, two things you need to make beef stroganoff. So instead of the butter, I subbed in mayonnaise. That's like an acceptable substitute, right? That can work sometimes. It's a fat. It's an oil. I substituted the milk with Bailey's Irish Cream coffee creamer. Not Bailey's Irish Cream liquor, Bailey's Irish Cream coffee creamer. And made the worst beef stroganoff of my life. And me and my friends were eating it because we were dumb and 18 and it was all we had. And one of them said it tasted like hot candy. So all of that played a big role in writing that ending scene there. That one specific story. As well as the cheese off a pizza line was something one of my friends said in response to, we were playing Silent Hill at the time, and when Pyramid Head rips the skin off of that character, my friend was like, oh, it's like cheese off a pizza. And so all of this like stuff from when I was a teenager made it into that end scene. And I don't know if any of the people who I was a teenager with will listen to it, except maybe Tucker. But if they do, those references are for you.
It was definitely visceral. It was a visceral listening experience. And I think that's what you were going for.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Although I will say the last cue, I want to go back. There's a couple sound design sins throughout season 2 that I want to go back and fix at some point.
Okay. What are you wanting to change about it, though, just to give people an idea?
So I think when you get swallowed by the carpet, I think that sound design sounds perfect when Perry just like, here goes nothing, pulls his head in, and then you hear this like, And I feel like that feels like someone getting swallowed by a carpet, which was really hard. It's less than a second, but I probably spent like 2 hours on that to tweak that because it like low grumbling and it moves from center mono to wider, and then we move Perry into the other room. There was a lot of thought that went into that. But then the final cue, when I get swallowed, I don't think it hits as much. I don't think it feels as big as it should. So that's something that just like, it got down to the point where I couldn't keep spending time on that one moment.
Yeah, I think like in the sound design libraries, you're going to have to look for something that is like after a whale has taken laxatives. If you could find the output of that and then just put that in your carpet context, it would be fantastic.
Honestly, if I could find that sound, or if someone will go out there and collect that sound for me and I could blend that in.
We say collect that sound, that just makes it sound worse.
Well, I don't know how else to describe that act. What really happened is I overworked it, I think. And you spend too much time on one thing, you move too many things around, and eventually just loses its cohesion. Because all of these cues are not, like all of that carpet stuff is so many layers. I can send some screenshots.
Yeah, it's funny for people that don't do sound design to get like one sound. There are usually like 15 different levels of stuff, layers of stuff under that make it feel even more real and dynamic. And it's a chore to get that stuff. For a pure audio that you're doing there's like the surface level thing that really stands out the most, and then there's the little intricacies that are there.
With cartoons or with something with a visual, like you can put a funny sound to something and it will work, but when you're only doing sound, the sound effects have to tell you what they are, or the characters have to tell you what it is, and it's bad if the character's like, I'm going to pick up this wet candle, so there's a bit of that with this wet carpet and all of that, but when you've got all these layers going, you're talking about dealing with frequency collisions. Like if some of these have too much low frequency content, and that's masking you want this one particular thing that has the most impact in the low end to come through. So you have to carve out space in the frequencies of the other sounds, and then you're worrying about stereo placement, and then you're worrying that it's going to come down to mono well, and that it's going to sound good played through a phone and going to sound good played through a car. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, that is funny when you do all that work just for somebody to play it without headphones on an iPhone on their desk.
And you know what? I have made it my mission, because I used to get mad about that when I was sound design, like before Digital Folklore, I'd be like, well, you can't listen to this on your bad thing. And I've made it my mission now to make them sound good on those things. And so I spend extra time bouncing it out to Google Drive, checking it on my phone, like in my house, and then I'll go back and tweak it again. So I try to make sure, and I haven't listened through all the way to make sure it's completely true, but I try to make sure that the Digital Folklore sounds good on a phone, on a table, like sound design wise.
Yeah, back when I used to do a lot of music production, I did the same thing. So I would record on really good speakers, do all that stuff in the studio. Then you're like, nobody has these speakers. So now I got to go listen to it on my car stereo, which is kind of mid. And then I go listen to it on somebody's cheap car stereo. And then I go listen to it on a really good system somewhere, but it isn't a studio grade system. And then on a, cheesy tape player in somebody's living room. And you get into all these weird mind games with yourself too. Mm-hmm. And then also these cascading effects of like, because it didn't work well in mid-grade car system that most people use, I got to go change this. Then it's got an effect on everything else too.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the mid-low end is muddy on most people's systems. So then you change that and it has knock-on effects all across the frequency spectrum. And then you have, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's that kind of game. That's the game.
That's fun.
It is fun though. Like that's the thing. It's like doing a puzzle.
Speaking of weird car radio systems, I do hear like the quality of different podcasts and different everything, because the car that I have has like these almost like these theater grade rumble seats in them.
What?
So anything that is a sub frequency will actually kick off the little vibration mechanism, like what you get in the theater. And so anytime somebody has like too much room tone in it, that's just low end rumble, the seat is just like vibrating the entire time they're talking, even though nothing's going on.
That's got to be a trip, listening to a bunch of shows.
It gets a little bit annoying with some shows that haven't managed that well, or if somebody's plosives are too much, it feels like you're being shot in the back.
I want that. I want to put a vibration motor in my computer chair. I want to experience my own show this way now.
You can get gaming chairs that have that.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like haptic. Yeah. Anything else interesting as far as the creation of the narrative or the sound design for this episode that you want to touch on?
I spent a lot of time crafting the ambience of the back rooms, and there's a lot of things I don't think anyone will ever notice. So I'm just going to say, I'll just say one of them, and it's that there's the power line hum, which is in the lore of the back rooms. You can hear the like 60 hertz hum with overtones of the lights, and it's a bit more than usual. And so I put in the US, our electricity is at 60 hertz. In Europe and elsewhere, it's at 50 hertz. I put in a 60 hertz sawtooth tone, and then I also put in a 100 hertz triangle wave tone, which would be the harmonic of a 50 hertz electrical cycle. So it's kind of this thing where it's like power line hum that doesn't exist because you have the root frequency of American power at 60 hertz and then the overtone of European power at 100 hertz. But then you also still have the harmonics of the American power at 120 and so on throughout the harmonic stack. And no one's ever going to notice that, but it's certainly something I thought about.
That's super geeky.
Yeah.
And then you find out that the back rooms is in such a different dimension that it has no concept of the US or Europe.
Right.
And that it operates with its own frequency ranges.
Its power is at like 72 hertz or something in the back rooms. I should have just done that. Should have just decided on a back rooms power standard and then created a distribution system.
You should see if there's a wiki for that.
I didn't see if there was a wiki about the specific power distribution frequency, but I should. And maybe I could edit it.
Yeah, and if there's not, maybe you can add it. Yeah, with all the specs that you just mentioned.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that I'm the kind of person who likes these kind of details because I know that no one will notice them and I shouldn't spend that much time. And to be fair, I didn't on this one spend that much time adding that, but it was something I consciously thought.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, if there were video cameras in the back rooms, at what shutter speed and frame rate do you need to set so you don't get light flicker?
Yeah, it would depend on the power frequency, wouldn't it? The power line frequency.
And would that tell us something about like where we are if we start to play with those kind of settings?
If you did, if you could, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do to deduce the power line frequency, but there is power in the back rooms, and I don't know that anyone's talked about what frequency it is. Also, fun fact, did you know, and maybe you did, and maybe this isn't that fun of a fact, but did you know that clocks used to run off of the cycles from the wall power? Because it's AC, alternating current, so it's cycling. Positive, negative, so many times a second. Clocks used to actually run off of those oscillations to keep time instead of having an internal timekeeping mechanism.
I did not know that. But did you know that I used to make any watch that I wore for more than 2 weeks would start ticking backwards?
Is this because you're a magician or because you're a magical person?
Back when I was growing up, and I think that this may be partly the cause, or I've got some weird magnetic stuff, but it's not happened like in the past 10 years. But when I was growing up, if I wore like a cheap Timex watch or something I would get at Walmart, within 2 weeks, it would start ticking backwards consistently. It didn't matter really the brand, but it was, like a sub $30 watch in today's money. But the area that I was growing up in was also adjacent to a military dumping site for Agent Orange. So Agent Orange was in tons of barrels, and
that's a plant killer, isn't it?
It was
like a crazy herbicide.
Yeah. But it was not really monitored that well. So me and a bunch of other friends used to break in there and like play around on the barrels and stuff. And then so at some point, I got on an EPA, I think it was the EPA call list, where they would call like once a year just to see like, hey, are you experiencing any symptoms like X, Y, Z?
Really?
And they followed that for a long time. So I'm not sure if that and the watch thing are connected or if it's just two bits of a coincidence, but it was connected in my mind, at least at the time.
That's wild, dude. Have you experienced anything relating to Agent Orange?
And I'm fine.
What do you have any explanation scientifically as to why this watch would be ticking backwards?
Not that I've researched enough to have like any competent theories about. I just assumed that there was some like weird, because there's a lot of iron in your blood, that there's some kind of weird magnetic resonance thing that was happening.
This warrants further research.
It does. I'm just too tired.
I think we need Perry. You might be an SCP.
Do you feel older than you are? Like, were you actually moving backwards in time?
I don't think I'm moving backwards because I feel older every day.
But if you moved back in smaller increments and kept throwing away the watches, maybe that was why you never went back in time.
I don't have a way to test that theory.
I'm having an emotional and mental crisis thinking about this.
I can no longer get back the years I've lost.
But you've had more years potentially than the rest of us in a regular lifespan.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to say you've had more years in your past than you have going forward.
Oh my God.
Oh, no.
Oof. Yeah, very sobering out of nowhere.
Thank you,
We're talking about liminal spaces, not existential spaces. Let's.
Yeah, right.
I do have 2 more comments to read. All right, these are on the most latest episode, so the one that we just are talking about right now. This is another one from Corvids R Us. You've talked about Gen Z a lot and how being a teenager is a liminal space. My question is, where do you think Gen Z is headed when the majority of this generation reaches their 20s or 30s?
What a question that I'm not qualified to say anything about.
Me too. I'm guessing full-on existential crisis and rejection of technology.
I mean,
Pendulum swing.
I think because they're the generation of prompt engineering, they're going to be very, very manipulative in a very weird and specific way because they're used to shaping their words to get exactly what they want from AI tools. That's my sci-fi author take. My realistic take is that everything has always been the same and will continue to be the same, and it won't actually feel that different.
You know, you hit on something really interesting, though, is that the current generation of people growing up is going to have to become way better at the implications of specific words and phrases than the generation that was before them. So the generation I grew up in, focus on spelling and grammar and sentence structure and all that was very, very high. And then we got to a couple generations where there was a lot more laxness in writing style as the internet started to grow and people did away with things like punctuation and capitalization and whole phrases and all of that. And I think now, to your point, prompt engineering means that it is now really, really important to understand the weight of your words, the order of the words that you put them in, the order of your sentences and the way that you do commands. And then also the implications of how you ask for something. Because we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record. The framing of your question or your prompt will greatly determine whether the thing gives you what you're hoping for. And I think that maybe Gen Z is going to learn that.
It is like a weirdly direct way in which you can see the impact of a single change, because when you're interfacing with this and working on a prompt, you're learning that these specific words have such direct meanings in a way that's a lot clearer than just learning that face-to-face through communication, like socially. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. But if I were to be more pessimistic about it, I think we all grew up like right at the beginning of the search engine age, and where you would start to understand like how to do advanced search operations and really understand kind of the Google hacking, Google dorking stuff.
People don't know like cite colon or using Booleans and quotes properly and stuff like that, or using before colon this date.
And it's because some of the search now assumes a lot of that as they're trying to become more natural language, but you still have an advantage if you know how to do all that. And I think prompt engineering is going to be the same way, is that the natural language processing behind all these systems is going to get better and better about trying to interpret what intent is. But the people that are better at plainly framing their intent with prompts are still going to get better output.
Yeah. And I think that that's going to be important, because I think the way we interface with a lot of technology will be with an AI layer, because it's this natural language thing that has a low barrier to entry. And from an accessibility standpoint too, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, all of these different input methods going into some common denominator that can understand what you want and then perform whatever it needs to perform to execute what you're asking it. I think we'll see AI as a user interface layer over almost everything, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to get, in the next 2 to 3 years, if you don't have an AI layer in your tech stack, you don't have table stakes for the things that people are expecting.
Another side of this, aside from that, is size of community. And I know that like we're all just spitballing. None of us can possibly know. But my hunch is that communities will keep getting smaller, micro communities becoming a thing. And then I hope that extends into the real world and we start seeing people be more active in their local micro communities, because I think that would be something that would be really helpful to the state of the world today. But we don't have to get into my own political philosophy.
Well, I think there's an impact though. Like what I've been thinking about for the last 5 minutes while you've been talking is the impact of effective use of technology and how that increasingly becomes the way we communicate, impacting in-person social connection. Because there is a problem of isolation and loneliness at the moment, generally across the world. Like, we're more interconnected than we could be, but also more lonely than we could ever be. But in terms of communicating with cultural speech, there's a lot that we can infer or take from the subtext of that speech. Like, if you walk up to a coffee shop or a Starbucks or something and you say, I want a triple shot with cream, hold the sugar, the way that you say that to the barista at the counter might indicate your economic, social class. It could indicate a bunch of things. But if instead we've got a generation of people brought up to ask for things through prompt engineering, if you're walking up to a barista and what you're asking is, you are a 20-year strong, award-winning barista who has worked in the industry for 30 years and your father was a bean roaster. I would like a coffee made in this particular way using, and it removes some of the social humanity from those interactions. And as low impact as they are, that's, 30 seconds of your day where you're buying a coffee. But if it has an ongoing effect.
In this instance, are you imagining that this person would be ordering through a non-human interface? Or were you, because at first I thought you were talking about talking to a human being that way.
I was, yep.
You think, I feel like it seems so bizarre to imagine someone speaking to someone else that way, to imagine language changing so broadly. I think partly because a lot of prompt engineering involves putting something on ChatGPT, saying you are. So saying that to another person is unthinkable to me, to be like, you are this, your father was this, now serve me under this set of circumstances.
And the interesting thing that will indicate whether that is a likely trajectory or not will be the Roke's basilisk of interactions with AI. Like, how many people and what age demographics say please when they prompt AI for anything. I do it.
All of this in response to the question about like what's going to happen with Gen Z. None of us really know, and none of us are particularly experts in any field that can specifically say what. So all of this is conjecture, and I think it's worth saying that as a blanket statement of just like, because we're a show that ostensibly is providing educational content a lot of the time, and so I want to make sure that people know that in this specific instance, we're just riffing as three people who don't have particular expertise on this. This is just our thoughts.
And are not in Gen Z, though we assume there's going to be dancing.
Right, there will definitely be dancing.
All right, I got one more comment that was on Spotify, and then we can move towards the final section. This is from Joel LeBlanc, I think. Says, Jesus, I'm becoming so obsessed with this show. And it's spelled Geezus. I'm becoming
Jesus.
So obsessed with the show, which we like to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Perry, is there anything that we need to hit before we let everyone go and move on to the next thing in their queue?
Now, I think one thing, so as everybody knows, this is the end episode of season 2, which means we're planning season 3. And we actually have some cool things that we're thinking about. We are going to try to incorporate video elements more. That does not mean that it will just be a couple of folks sitting around on video chatting like you see in a lot of podcasts. We're going to try to bring some unique flavor and production values and everything to what we do, but we're working out the final details of that right now. So stay tuned for the way that we will be trying to, I'm not even going to say transition, but trying to really incorporate more multimodal elements within the things that we do so that we can reach a broader audience. There will be updates on that because as we're between seasons, we're going to be doing some between season updates, and you'll get clued in on all of that and how to make sure you don't miss anything once we get those details ironed out.
It's going to be so cool, though.
Yeah.
I'm just holding my tongue.
I'm like saying that like really flatly from a business perspective, but under it all, we're super excited about some of the opportunities that we're going to get by doing that.
Yeah, we're all really excited to show you the stuff we're kicking around as ideas. It's going to be so cool. But I will inadvertently say too much. But I just wanted to inject some excitement. So I will.
There you go. Yeah, add excitement, because I was like totally flat on that delivery.
You're good at holding it back. That's why it's good that you delivered that, because I would have spoiled it.
Okay, but it is something listeners should be excited about, because the opportunity to have a medium where there's a payoff from a listening standpoint, there's another payoff from a viewership standpoint, and then of course we have community engagement and everything else, and we've got some really cool fun stuff that we always like to inject and everything. So if you can imagine some fun things that we may do, feel free to do so. If you have suggestions on things, once we talk about expanding these borders a little bit, feel free to comment in the Discord on what you would like to see us do, and we'll go from there. So I think it's all good, fun stuff. Mason and I just have to get like heads down and actually start doing it.
But I can't wait.
Yeah.
And I think someone has to say thank you to you, Mason, for all the time that you've sacrificed very clearly. The fatiguing moments, the rushes to deadlines, the massive undertaking you've had over the last, probably the back half of this season more so than the front half. But
yeah, the behind the scenes has been like torture for Mason, guys.
It's been chaotic, and I mean it's been largely a monster of like my own making. And it's just it's thank you though, Matt. I do appreciate that. Like it's not all me by any stretch though. Like it's you guys too. Like this would not be possible at all.
As an audio only project, as it's been for the last couple, it's always hard with an audio project. If anyone who has experience in podcasting, having a couple of people presiding over a single project, the last step sits with you. At least it has predominantly. It's okay to bear that burden and say, yes, I sacrificed a lot.
It has been hard. So
it did hurt a bit.
I'll say two things because Mason mentioned that it was largely a monster of his own making. So taking it back to monster theory, we did say the monster always escapes. Which is depressing. But then the last one in that is what the monster stands at the threshold of becoming.
Right.
And so what are we going to turn this monster into? That people will have to tune in later to find out on the Between the Season updates.
Join us for our villain arc. Dun, dun, dun.
For the monstrous journey to continue.
Exactly.
This is your delivery driver from Grumble's Pizza and Sauce, and I just wanted to call and get a little quick clarification on what the delivery instructions meant. It says, leave it with the raccoon. What? Okay, bye.
Hey, it's Mae Whitman, and I play Frankie in the new Realm podcast, The Sisters. The Sisters is about a museum curator of medical oddities who investigates the origins of a mutated skeleton with 2 layers of bones.
7 ribs are completely fused. And you have no idea where this came from?
No, she was sent here anonymously.
Not she. They, maybe?
Wait.
I've never seen anything like this.
Soon, she uncovers an extraordinary mystery that connects her present with one family's tragic past in hauntingly dangerous ways.
My grandfather was a journalist back in the 60s and 70s. He specialised in strange stories.
Who are they? How are they connected to the skeleton?
Play the tape. You'll see.
Listen to The Sisters wherever you get your podcasts.
We dream about it. We both dream about it.
How often?